it was a conversation, right? We talk about it all the time today. Diversity. I mean, right now, even as we speak, Mark Cuban and Elon are going at it about diversity. I just posted about that myself because Mark Cuban has invested $6 million into Backstage Capital. So I know what he believes. But I think there needed to be more people in the seat of writing checks, in the position to write checks. And that's not the only part of it, but that's a major part of it.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Hey, it's 1:10:23. Got a special guest for you, a real inspiration to myself, and I know she will be to you as well. Her name is Arlan Hamilton, and Arlan is a very unique individual. Her journey, well, we all have unique journeys. Some are easier than others. She took the long way, the hard way to get where she is now as a successful venture capitalist. Arlan, just a few short years ago, you were homeless, and well, that's everybody's greatest fear, is that you'll wake up without a roof over your head. So you found yourself homeless. How'd that come about?
It was a series of events. It wasn't all at once, all of a sudden. I'd never grown up with money or anything like that. Moved probably a dozen times while I was a child and teenager, just because my mother was trying to make ends meet. Very, very bright woman who I'm going to get to see today. I love traveling with her now. Just kind of, circumstances. So then the adult, just having that starting kind of behind and never really head above water. And so it was a series of events and several years of back and forth. Sometimes I would have a place to live and it wouldn't be so great, but it was shelter, and sometimes I wouldn't. And it started in my 20s was more of, couch surfing. It could be misconstrued as kind of fun, being young, hanging out. And I like it that way because I didn't want everyone to feel pity for me. But in my 30s, it got really serious because I ended up, before I got my first investor for Backstage Capital, my venture fund, I was sleeping on the floor of the San Francisco airport. That was my home.
Wow. Really?
And, yeah. In fact, I've met Queen Latifah, and she has said in passing, very, very casually, that she'd like to play me in a Pursuit of Happiness type of movie because of that.
It's really the same kind of story as, I can't remember the guy's name, Gardner, I think it was. Will Smith played his character. It was an amazing movie. And, so you were in California, you were homeless.
Yeah, I was in Texas. My hometown is Dallas, so I was there a lot of this. And I got myself to California because I knew that that's where I needed to be if I wanted to start this fund.
Right. So, hey, what is your educational background like?
I graduated high school. I was very, very bright, got into some colleges, but did not go to them because I did not want to leave my family behind to worry about money. Also because I'm, a bit of an iconoclast, and I wasn't doing so well on the personality side of school. I took a few courses in community college just because I'm a curious person, and have just been learning ever since through life experiences.
Interesting. So, all right. So you had this vision, I guess, to start this fund, and how did that come about? The vision?
Yeah, it was around, so, I have many, many lives, and one of them I was working on tour with musicians as a production coordinator. And it may sound a little fancy, but it's definitely, hand to mouth because you get a gig for 4 weeks and then you're off the road. And
sure,
I was watching these these people like CeeLo and Tony Braxton and Jason Derulo have meetings with their business managers about startups. And this was maybe 12 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago. And I was doing the thing where I was pretending not to be eavesdropping, but I was totally taking notes. Well, they just did. I call us underestimated, different people underestimated. I was definitely underestimated. So people didn't realize, these lawyers and managers didn't realize I was actually really taking note. And I thought, what would make someone like an Ellen DeGeneres who was doing this, and a Justin Bieber who was doing this, and Ashton Kutcher, what would make them interested in Silicon Valley? Well, this place is called Silicon Valley. So I started doing research, and I realized, oh, that's me. This is my people. These are my people. This is my tribe. And so originally I was going to try to raise money for a company. And as I started doing my research on that, 2013 through 2015, that's when I learned this stark statistic that anyone who's not a white man in the U.S. who is raising, obviously, not every white man gets access to capital, but who is raising in Silicon Valley and beyond, anyone other than that gets 10% of the funding. So all women across all your wives, all your daughters, all the people that are your friends are getting crumbs. And I thought that is so interesting. And white men make up about a third of the country, a little bit less than a third of the country. And they get 3 times that in funding. And so I thought, as a Black queer woman in the South with no connections and didn't go to college, I could probably find my way to $1 million raise because I've been that girl, I've been that woman, I'm going to find my way. But then what happens next? And what happens to my colleagues and my peers? So I thought, well, instead of trying to raise $1 million for a company, what if I raised $1 million to invest? And then I'm writing checks and I get to have a say. I get a seat at the table. I might have influence. I get to help decide who gets heard and who gets to move forward with their innovations. And I just got on that track, and I just happened to be homeless when I decided that. And it's been a wild ride, but we certainly have come far from that point.
Interesting. So, what do you attribute the fact that these people only get 10% of the deals going out there? Is it they're not out there pounding the pavement? Is it just discrimination, or is it just expectations? What is it?
The not pounding the pavement is humor, very humorous. The reason I wanted to start the fund was not just because I'm a great person, because I am, but it's also because I've always, since I was like 5, played Monopoly, and I've always wanted to be rich, and this is how you do it. Because the people that I'm describing, women, people of color, LGBTQ+, et cetera, every single day of our lives, we have to play harder and faster and better to be considered equal, if that. So there was pounding of the pavement out of this world. It was just that there are gatekeepers and their doors closed. So everyone has been in this position, no matter who you are. Even Elon Musk, even the richest man in the world, has been in a position where somebody did not appreciate their value and did not believe in them. And and think about that, as at scale. So we'll fast forward a little bit to say that I have now invested in more than 200 companies. I've been on the cover of Fast Company. I was just on ABC News nationally. I have 2 books out by major publishers. And today I was mistaken for someone who worked at this hotel at CES. Today.
Yeah.
43 years old. So if that is happening to me, and I am as audacious and strong-willed as they come, think about what must be happening to your friends and what happens to you sometimes. Just think about that at scale. Mm-hmm. So I think it had to do with that. I also think that, 10 years ago, only a very small percentage of the people who were writing checks were white men. So a lot of it is, who went to my college? Who's in my fraternity? Who do I have a network? Yeah, it's networks. And, the more diverse just look at your wedding pictures. That's one way to look at it. Look at your wedding pictures and see how diverse it was. No matter how advanced and developed and enlightened you think you may be, and I'm talking generally, not to you directly, there's always room for us to grow. And so I was seeing that very early before it was a conversation, right? We talk about it all the time today, diversity. I mean, right now, even as we speak, Mark Cuban and Elon are going at it about diversity. I just posted about that myself because Mark Cuban has invested $6 million into Backstage Capital. So I know what he believes. But I think there needed to be more people in the seat of writing checks and the position to write checks. And that's not the only part of it, but that's a major part of it. And that's what I set out to do.
So opportunity important for everyone, that they have an opportunity. But what part does merit play in this?
Yeah, it plays a lot of merit. I think that question comes up, and I speak in front of all different types of audiences around the world. And sometimes I speak in front of audiences that are just straight up private equity. Every person in the seat is a man who is white. And I get people who come up to me and after I speak and they say, look, I didn't have it easy. I got to my position by hard work, determination, talent, studying, etc. Not taking that away from anyone. But in order for a woman or a person of color to walk out of their own home in America, they have to go through a landmine of things. Some Black people don't know if they're going to make it back home. And I'm not being hyperbolic. Some people they or their children are going to make it back home that night because there might be some small road incident that turns into something very escalated. My niece is 17. My mother bought her first car, and she was an fender bender. And we were terrified, not because we thought she might have, of course we were worried about her physical health of getting in the accident, but it was a fender bender. We were more concerned with what the reaction to law enforcement would be. And that is not our fault. I think if you were to talk about merit-based, pound for pound, on equal footing, and we're seeing this in our portfolio, we're seeing this everywhere, that if we're going to really be real, many of the people that I invest in would lap a lot of the successful white men, if we're talking merit-based. So I think personally, they should actually start hushing up a little bit more about that, because if we really reveal and put the light on it, they may be deeply disappointed. But I'm here for equality. I'm here for diversity, and that means true diversity. If you look at my team across the years and today, it is true diversity.
So one thing, raise capital for a company, qualified people, all right, yeah. A lot of times because they're not the right skin color, whatever beliefs group, they don't get it. But what about when you start getting into like airline pilots? All right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do I pick somebody because they're the right color or because they can fly the plane better?
Well, I mean, I don't know you well, so I don't know where you're what intention you're coming with that question. But I will tell you, you want both, because if a Black woman cannot even get to the point where she can take the classes and study the thousands of hours that are necessary, how is she supposed to be as good as the next person? So, like Mark Cuban said recently. And I know this personally because my mother and I have put a Black woman through pilot school over the past 4 years. Yes. So I know there's direct
qualified.
There are so many hurdles they have to jump. Anyone who wants to be a commercial pilot, anyone. So many hurdles. There's no way to accidentally become a pilot. There's no way to accidentally become a commercial. So if there are more people who are given the opportunity to even start the program, they will select themselves out or not by their acumen along the way.
We would hope. Yes. Because we don't want, you'll agree that we don't want unqualified people flying the planes, and we don't want unqualified people in the air traffic control center steering those planes around, because it's going to result in disaster, regardless whom they might be, regardless their
I agree with you 100%. I fly every week of the year. Of course, I believe that. I care about people's safety. But I think that question comes from a place and has for other people of, well, I don't want to necessarily put a Black person there because if they're not as qualified just because they're Black. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying hire pilots because they're Black. We're saying give more Black people the opportunity to become pilots.
And no one can argue with that. Right? No one can argue with it. But do you want to put them ahead of other people because they've been disadvantaged, or should they compete on a level playing field?
They should absolutely compete on a level playing field. I wouldn't want it any other way because they have more lives in their hands than most surgeons will have in a lifetime or a year.
Exactly.
So I agree with that. But tell me who is putting Black people ahead of the line when it comes to pilots? It's absolutely ridiculous. When is the last time you saw a Black pilot? When is the last time you saw?
I was on a plane to Colombia, and both pilots were Black.
And I tell you, both of those pilots went through years of training.
For sure. Which,
so I don't
matter to me. As long as they're safe and they're qualified. I mean, there was an instance, in LaGuardia, Southwest Airlines plane, 2 female pilots. They weren't, I don't want to say they weren't qualified, but they had an incident that crash landed the plane right before the runway. All right. Now, when there's an incident, the FAA has got to be there. They got to check it out. But these 2 pilots were not necessarily that they weren't qualified. They weren't qualified to be there with each other because their weaknesses kind of canceled out, kind of compounded. So I just want to see the people who are going to be best at the job be there. I don't want to ever see anyone excluded because of their background, their race, or any other reason, and I know that's happened in the past. You can't deny that. It's true, and it happens now.
I'll say a couple of things there. One is, tell me the list of incidents that have happened with men pilots. What's that list?
It happens.
It happens.
It happens, for sure.
Piloting is not only has to be a merit-based industry or occupation, but it's also an apprentice-based. So again, the point of this is not just to put anybody in that seat, and that's not happening, by the way. No one is doing that. But the point of it is a lot of the pilots I see are older white men.
Yeah. And shortage.
We need them. I want to be safe on the plane. I don't want an older white man who can't see as well anymore. I don't want an older white man who can't react as well. Everybody needs to be balanced. It needs to be balanced. So we need to train more people, regardless of their race or their gender. We need to train more qualified people.
For sure.
And give them the opportunity. And in doing so, that needs to include people of color because we're here.
I'll tell you one thing is that the retirement age is 65. All right.
Yeah.
And, I have a personal friend who's the senior most pilot at a major legacy airline carrier. No one had more experience than him, worked for the FAA, was the chief safety pilot of this airline. He had to go at 65, even though he's perfectly fine to go. So there's some discrimination there. The guy's 65, and 65 is not what it used to be, and they allow him to fly private aircraft. So where's the equity there? I mean, that's ageism. Just as bad and profound as any other type of discrimination. I'm 66.
We don't disagree there. We don't disagree there. So imagine you're 66, and imagine every single day, not just certain things that you could point to, but every single moment of every single day of your life from now on. Imagine that someone is looking at you and saying, he can't do that. He's 66. He can't do it. He's 67. That's what it's like to be a Black woman in America.
Yeah, well, I'm not flying the plane, so they're not looking over my shoulder.
Your friend, though, is qualified too, right? Your friend shouldn't be discriminated against. That's what's happening on both sides. So we do not disagree.
Yeah. So it's bad on all counts, and and they got rid of him. Now they have a pilot shortage, right? They could have given them a couple more years. The FAA has been talking about this for years and years.
Yeah, I think you should go on MSNBC and talk about something like this, or CNN and talk about it. I think it's very true.
Yeah, well, I think he should too, but he's not going to. But I love the fact that you're helping people who basically, and look, I have no love for Wall Street and no love for our government, but basically who had their backs, societies turn their backs on them just like they did to you. So the fact that you pulled yourself up and you did it, right? Doesn't that mean that others got the potential to do it as well?
Yes, of course I do. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Of course I have the
which is great, because to me, remember that old commercial, a mind is a terrible thing to waste, but potential not realized is a crime.
Yeah,
right. I agree. So how do you pick somebody and you say, this person failed at everything, but I believe in you and I think you can do this? You got to have some criteria, right?
I don't select people who have failed at everything. I see 1,000 companies a year, and that's not hyperbole. I see 1,000 companies a year, and we invest in maybe 1% of them. I do not choose people who have failed at everything. I choose people who are like your friend, the pilot, who is 66 or 67, who can outdo anybody that he is near, but is just being not given a chance to prove that and where he should be.
So how do you find it? Because obviously a lot of them haven't had the success yet in life that they're probably going to have. That to me is the hardest thing, is because you got unlimited demand, right?
I look at it as, what have you done with the resources you have? So I have to, really, really paint this picture. I have a limited amount of funds. I have LPs who are looking to get a return on investment. And personally, I could be a nonprofit, or I could be philanthropic, which I am philanthropic. I'm giving away millions of dollars of my personal money. But I'm here to do a job. So it's painting the picture of people who are coming to me. First of all, it's not easy to just have a moment. Someone earlier today said, "Can I get 15 minutes of your time?" And I just looked at him and blinked. And I said, "I don't know. My mother can't get 15 minutes of my time like that. So I don't know how you could." So first of all, it is, getting in the room. Obviously, we're not gatekeepers. So we're not saying if you didn't go to school or you're not this person or connected, you can't. So there is an application process. But we have a 30-person apprenticeship team who pours through applications to surface the one or two a month that the partner should be looking at. Second of all, as I've invested over the years, because we've invested in quite a few companies to accelerate the growth, my criteria has changed. And I'm an entrepreneur first, so I have several different things that I work on. So I'm not a big, Wall Street fan either. I'm not a big nerd when it comes to that. But I say, is this something, obviously, because can it make money? Is it already making money with the resources you have? What is the groundswell? What is your unfair advantage? But then I also say, could I do this if I applied myself? Could I do this in a 10-year period myself? Could I build this? And if I can, it's not interesting to me anymore. But if I can't, if I feel like it would take me more than a decade or even a lifetime to get anywhere close to what you're working on, that is exciting to me. And that's my barometer. And then we have people at the team who use their spreadsheets and their different, we have certain criteria, of course. But there's a woman, for instance, who is a doctor, Black woman, and she is at a very, rarefied air, no pun. She has a company called Air Protein, and they're creating protein from air. They have an air farm. And this is technology started at NASA in the 70s and then left, and they took over this. And she's been working on this for 20-some years in different ways. And then in 2019, I believe she started Air Protein. And they have very few competitors. Their competitors they have raised themselves. Air Protein has raised more than $100 million because agriculture understands this, these moonshot ideas. And she's absolutely brilliant. A few years ago, when I was starting, people thought she was crazy. People thought she's not qualified. She can't fly this plane. And now she's figured it out, right? And so these are the people I'm talking to. I'm not talking. I'm not talking to.
You had to get through medical school, right? She's a doctor or a doctorate.
Yeah, exactly. It's that. There's a company in our portfolio called Akash that has invented a technology that cools objects in space more than any other material on this planet or other planets that we know, right? Obviously. And so it's colder than ice. It is up for the CHIPS program, which is a $150 million grant if they were to get that from the government. It's on a short list for that. And this is a Black man who used to, when I met him in 2017, would not put his photograph on the website because he has lost deals when they saw who the person was. We have another company, Black man, incredible company. He had an investor online. They met up at a Denny's or something. He walks into the Denny's. The guy says, "Oh, didn't realize he was Black," reneges on his deal. These are real life things that are happening. And they're not us with a chip on our shoulder or trying to cause trouble. It's happening. So as long as that's happening, I think the fund is necessary, and funds like ours, many have spun out from ours. But if I had it my way, I would just be waking up every day looking at great deals and looking at great innovation. I wouldn't have all this other stuff involved. It's taxing. You know what I mean? It's taxing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I've looked at a lot of deals in my life, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Hey, so what do you feel most proud of in your life, Arlan?
The people who come up to me, the fact that people come up to me every day if I'm out and about, or they write to me if I'm not, and tell me some way that I've helped them without knowing it. Today, and I say today, I was downstairs at CES and I ran into a lot of people. One was a Black woman today, like 2 hours ago, and I filmed it. She said, "I just wanted to introduce myself. I was at Columbia. One of our professors did the Harvard business case study about you. It encouraged me and inspired me to become a venture capitalist. I've been in VC for 2 years now." That happens every day, and it's only getting stronger. And so I'm very proud of that, and the fact that I have kept my integrity intact when so many times I've been offered hush money. I've been offered money to go away. I've been offered money to be quiet, to be less than, all the things. And I mean this, across the board. And I have turned it down every single time.
Right.
Because it's important to do the thing.
Hey, you thought about working for the government here? We need more people like you there.
Oh, wow. No, I haven't.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I agree with you. I mean, I think it's interesting how so many people have been disenfranchised by the government, but are on opposite sides, and they feel like they can't relate, even though it's so relatable, right? It's like, to me, I don't know your affiliation or your audience, but most of the people who support Trump, if they talked to most people of color, would understand that we're very similar.
Everybody wants the same things. They want to go to decent schools. You want to live in a safe community. You want to have the opportunity to improve your life and provide for your family. We all want the same things. It's when interested parties get involved and pit us against one another that we wind up at each other's throats, and then we don't really notice the big picture, what's really going on and why they're doing it.
Yeah. And they have their feet on the desk counting dollars, counting $100 bills and laughing as
all over the world,
each other in the streets. Yeah. Happens all the time. Across color, across.
It's nothing to do with that. It's power.
Yeah. It's power
and money. It's got nothing to do. They don't care anything about who you are, what race you are. All they want to do is just divide and conquer. That's it. They don't care. So I really admire what you've done. Hey, if there's one thing you could change in your life, what would it be?
I was addicted to alcohol from 21 to 36, and I've been sober for 6.5 years now.
Congrats.
It's a book called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, if anybody's interested in cutting down or quitting totally. I read it over 5 days and I didn't pick up a drink since. And I was addicted. I was drinking every single day. So I would have done that sooner. I would have stopped sooner. Because
I would just point out to you, it always is nice to do the drill of going back and changing. But, it's kind of like that little butterfly that flaps its wings and causes a tsunami. You couldn't be you if you didn't go.
Yeah, I answered that way because you asked that question. But
sure.
Usually I say I have no regrets of any failures or anything. Even people ask me, like, would you go back and what would you change about how you went from where you are to now? Would you have wanted that to be easier or faster? And I always say no. Because we have no idea we're saying the same thing. We would have no idea what today would look like if that were different in any way. Right. All the things that kind of fell through, and I talk a lot about them in my book, Your First Million, that came out just a few days ago. All the things that fell through, you'll read about a $5 million deal I had with Charles Gahn. I can't pronounce his name, but the one who was like extradite, or the one who's like, on the run from Nissan. I had a deal with his company for $5 million.
Right. Oh, Galsan. Yeah, right.
In 2 weeks. All those things at the time, I'm just like, wow, knocked me off my feet. But I got back up, right? But what if the butterfly effect, let's go back and see, what if that had gone through? Would I be in some cubicle right now having to answer to a certain person? Would I not have invested in the last 100 of the 200 companies I invested in? Who knows? So yeah, I don't regret that. But I think I was suffering through the alcoholism and I would have liked to that load. So that's the only thing that kind of comes close to what I would change.
So one final point. Okay. Failure. All right. It's indispensable teacher. You can't get anywhere in life unless you failed. And if you do get there without any failures, you're probably not going to appreciate anyway that you got there. How can you help people embrace failure in a way that will ensure that they succeed?
When you said the question, it cut out. So how can I help people do that?
So how do you help people embrace their past failures, accept them, just like you have, and build upon them, build their eventual success upon them? Because it seems to me from the time we go to school and you're told no, and when you fail a test, you're ostracized, that red F on your exam, and you do everything in your power to avoid failing, even at the expense of succeeding. And to me, that is like one of the biggest problems we have in our society, is that just because you fail does not make you a failure. And you should be happy you failed because you understand it and you can learn from it.
100%. Early in my venture career, I met with Aaron Levy, the CEO and founder of Box.com, multi-billion-dollar. And he told me about, and he was super young when he started it, but he told me about all the failures, quote unquote failures he had prior to that. If you think about the times that Elon and his team have shot rockets into space and they haven't landed, or they have blown up, or they have that, you have to have that happen in order for it to actually work. You have to have the experience and the moments for that to work. And so I think of it as a numbers game. Every single time someone told me no, as I was raising millions of dollars and generating millions of dollars in revenue over the past decade, every single time someone told me no, which was far more times than I was told yes, I thought of it as a numbers game. I have to get through the no's to reach the yes. And if I'm getting too many yeses, I'm not asking for enough. Right? So everybody, there are a lot of people who get paralyzed with fear of failing, like you said, and they're letting the years go by. And then that kind of compounds and they feel like they can't break out of that. My mother started her eyewear line at 74, and it's been one of the brightest moments of her life.
Amazing.
And it didn't take a lot to do it. She helped design it. She partnered with someone who could manufacture and distribute. And then she's been doing pop-ups and being the model for it. So you can I would say, would agree that she feels like she's had a lot of failures because, again, we moved around a lot and we didn't have a lot of money and it was tough. That was on her to feel that failure. Imagine if she had let that stop her. That can eat at you like a cancer. So there's so many people and so many things in this world that are against you naturally and unnaturally. Don't be your own detriment. Don't be your own saboteur.
Your own worst enemy.
Sorry?
Your own worst enemy.
Worst enemy.
Yeah.
Don't
be your best friend, not your worst enemy. Hey, the book is Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton. I assume it's sold on Amazon and wherever fine books used to be sold.
That's correct. It's a major publisher. It's at airports, it's at Hudson's, it's at Target, Barnes and Noble. It's across, and at your library if you want to do that. Please also support indie bookstores. They're the most important of these.
Yeah, I used to spend hours in them, but no more, I'm afraid. It's too hard to find, especially by me here in Florida. There's a few left, but it's just things are different now. Hey, really appreciate your coming on, Arlan. And really admire your journey and what you've accomplished, and can only imagine what lies ahead for you. If you got a question for Arlan and myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com, and make sure you sign up for your free newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Arlan, been a pleasure, and love to talk to you again and talk about some other things, other challenges you've faced, and people you've helped.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.